A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Now, I was at an event very recently where a group of young people unexpectedly began chanting from the river to the sea. And immediately many others in the group joined in with a resounding Palestine shall be free. And I felt sick, my heart dropped, but I was also convinced and hopeful, I guess, that a significant percentage of the ones who were joining in the chant didn't actually realise the significance of the words, that they were actually calling for the annihilation of Israel. My special guest this morning understands all too well the deep and awful meaning of these words. His Jewish mother fled the Holocaust in 1938. As an Anglican pastor for over 25 years, Mark forged a reputation for being someone who spoke even then with truth and clarity and kindness, even when it's uncomfortable. But when the recent old but new form of anti-Semitism raised its ugly head in our nation, Mark was thrust into spotlight for that same commitment, I guess, to truth, clarity and kindness. But he now leads a national grassroots movement. It's called Never Again Is Now. I'm sure many, if not most of you, have heard of it. And it's dedicated to cultural renewal, civic courage and moral leadership. Mark bravely confronts hatred in the public discourse, and what he does is he leads the call for every single Australian, not just those of faith, to stand up for the timeless values that we have, particularly the dignity of every individual and our freedoms. So Mark Leach, welcome to the program. It's actually a privilege and an honour to have you.
Well, Wendy, it's a great delight and joy to be on here with you and to talk to you and your listeners. And thanks so much for having me.
Well, Mark, when you unfurled an Israeli flag on the edge of a crowd that was spewing hate in Sydney, and I watched you on TV, I'm pretty sure, that you wouldn't have had any idea that single action would end up mobilising tens of thousands of everyday Australians from all walks of life to take a stand against anti-Semitism. But B, I'm also pretty confident that you wouldn't go back and change it. You would still do the same thing. Am I right? Would you still do exactly what you did?
Oh, absolutely. You're right on both counts. So I had no idea that move that act would change my life. And then I think, God willing, it seems to be shifting and changing the lives of many folk in Australia, and God willing, change the direction of our country. I mean, that's what God does with little acts. You know, you never know what's going to happen. So, I would not go back and change it. If anything, we should have been doing this 20 years ago, really. But the next best time to start these sorts of movements is right now. So, no, I wouldn't change anything.
The history and the politics of the Middle East, and particularly when we look at the war in Gaza, it's complicated though, isn't it? And my heart grieves, and as I'm sure yours does, for innocent children and babies in Israel and Gaza alike, both of them. But one thing that is not complicated, that's complicated. One thing that's not complicated is that there is never an excuse for anti-Semitism. And for me, it's unthinkable. It has been unthinkable that it has re-emerged in Western culture. I have been surprised is not strong enough word. I've just been shocked about it. So, why is it re-emerging in Western culture, and how is it re-emerging in a country like Australia? Do you have an answer to that?
That's a great question, and the answer has many layers. The most obvious layer is that the war in Gaza has been used as an excuse to mobilize this ancient hatred, which finds its roots, for 3,000 years or more, people have attacked and persecuted Jewish people. And so at its most fundamental level, I think spiritually, it's an attack on God. The Jewish people are God's chosen people to bring his presence, his light, his life, his love into the world, along with a moral code and compass. And they're his treasured possession, God's children. And we all know if you have kids, the only thing worse than suffering yourself is seeing your children suffer. And so I think Satan and the forces of evil have attacked God by attacking his people. And if they can undo and destroy Israel and the Jewish people, I think they can do great damage to God's plan. So I think that's at the core. And then I think the war in Gaza has been animated by that spiritual reality, but also used by groups who are viciously anti-Semitic. So anti-Semitism is a feature, not a bug, of much Islamic theology, and the conflict and the agenda fueled by the Muslim Brotherhood in and around Israel has taken root here in Australia. That the anti-Semitism dressed up as anti-Zionism, but it's just hatred. So it's extraordinary that we've seen it in 2025 that we should be having this conversation, but here we are. We don't get to choose the times we live in.
Join the conversation. Text 0447 488 316 with a question or comment for today's guest. Text 0447 488 316 to make your voice heard. 2020 on Vision Christian Radio.
For those of you who are listening who may not know what Never Again Is Now is all about, Mark, would you mind briefly just explaining, the key objectives, I guess, of Never Again Is Now? What sparked its formation? What are you doing?
Yeah, so we started after the events of October 7, in particular 2 days after October 7, that infamous event, a rally that ended up at the Opera House with the pro-Palestinians burning Aussie flags, burning Australian flags and so on. And I led a one-person protest against that, waving an Israeli flag there. And what became clear to me then was we were in a very dangerous situation here in Australia with this explosion of anti-Semitism. And I knew that as the war in Gaza unfolded, this would only get worse. And I thought we've got to wake the Christian community up in the first instance, but then everyday Australians as well, to the risks we face of repeating the failures of the church in Germany in the 1930s. So, in the 1930s, 20% of the church in Germany supported Hitler, 20% opposed Hitler. And the problem was the middle 60% who just said, we don't want to be political, we don't want to get involved. So your listeners may not know this, but the most common day for rounding up Jews in Germany in the late 30s and 40s was on Sunday mornings. The authorities would instruct the pastors to keep their people in the churches and sing their hymns, so they wouldn't get in the way of their Jewish neighbors being rounded up and taken off to death camps. Mm-hmm. And it struck me that in Australia, we need to we're a long way from that actually happening. But, pogroms build slowly and then happen quickly. And any form of anti-Semitism is just unthinkable or should be unthinkable in Australia. So a small group of us said, let's work to just get the Christian community in the first instance to wake up. And what that's developed into is a movement to make anti-Semitism unthinkable by renewing our commitment to Western civilization, this culture, the civilization that has grown up from the Bible, from the Torah, from the Hebrew scriptures, the Christian scriptures, the way that has influenced societies and cultures, has formed Australia to be a place where everyone is safe and free. We reject tribal identity politics, and we certainly ought to reject any form of racism, and racism directed at Jewish people. So that's how we started, and it's quickly spread to this grassroots movement across the country. Somewhere around 40,000 people are on our database, getting our emails. I've spoken in the last 18 months to about 30,000 people face-to-face, and we're just trying to say to people, hey, this country, this civilization where everybody is safe and free, this is worth defending and protecting and standing. And if you're a Christian and you worship a Jew, Jesus is Jewish, Israel's Messiah, I think there's a deep spiritual obligation to stand with the Jewish people in this time. So that's how we started. That's what we're doing. And, it's one day at a time, pushing back the evil, overcoming evil with good, as the Apostle Paul says.
That's right. This is your full-time job now, yes?
Yeah, yes. I finished up. I've been a pastor, Anglican local church leader for 30 years, and I finished that up in September a year ago, yeah.
Yeah, you would have to with what's happening. So people might not be able to stay with us till the end of the session today. So just quickly, people can support you by going to your website. Is that?
Yeah, 100%. Go to neveragainisnow.com.au, sign up as a supporter, sign a pledge. We've got a pledge on there for Christian people to sign to make a commitment to combat anti-Semitism. Sign the pledge, and then in October the 26th, we're running events all around the country to bring everyday Australians, Jewish and non-Jewish, together to say no to anti-Semitism, to stand against it. So we'd love you to sign up on that as well and join us. Yeah,
that's great. We'll visit that again towards the end if anybody missed that. But I'd like to talk to you now, Mark, about the role that government plays in all of this. And particularly I want to draw to your attention, and I don't know whether you know this, but last week a Queensland citizen uploaded a petition to the Queensland Government petition site. Now, it has to be approved by the Queensland Government to go on the petition site. I have personally had petitions declined in the past, so it is a process that you have to go through. Are you aware that there's a petition up there about this at the moment?
I'm not, no.
Okay.
Tell me about it.
So let me read it to you. Queensland citizens draw to the attention of the House that there has been press coverage that Edinburgh was the first city in Scotland to propose boycotting, divesting from and sanctioning Israel and all Israeli businesses. Your petitioners therefore request the House to boycott, divest from and sanction all businesses from Israel and Israel the country. Our Constitution predates the Australian Constitution and will allow us to have a voice the world can hear. Now, there are 31 petitions on this website at the moment that have been approved by the Queensland Government. This is the 20th largest, so we're not talking that it's up the largest, but it is not the least. Since last night, another 36 people, so I looked at it late last night. Since last night, late, 36 more people have signed it. I just looked at it now. So people are signing this petition. And again, I can tell you that I have got goosebumps on my arms as I read that to you and tell it to you. This is, I think it's cowardice, particularly for me, of the government for even allowing it to go up. What is your response to that I've just read to you, Mark?
Well, I think it's an appalling act of misinformed racism, but it's not new. So listen to this. I was just doing some research this morning. There was a Jewish business making carpets and woolen products who set up in the 1950s, an industry, helped set up a manufacturing industry in Israel, led by a guy called Leon Fink and his family. On the 13th of March and the 18th of August, 1965, United Carpet Mills received 2 letters from the League of Arab States, the central office for the boycott of Israel, and they threatened to boycott Fink products due to their dealings with Israel. 1965, before Israel was in the disputed or occupied territories, while they were in the borders that everybody now wants to go back to and say these are pre-67 borders are the way to go. So your listeners and Australians need to know this is nothing new. This is nothing more than a sustained attempt by the anti-Semitic Arab enemies of Israel to isolate Israel and to destroy a Jewish homeland in the Middle East. Their goal from the late 19th and early 20th century was to prevent the formation or prevent Jews returning to the land. And they have been, since the Jewish community was given the land in 1948, the land was partitioned, they have been steadfastly trying to destroy it. That the Queensland government does not see that this is just such an attempt. This is racist. This is deeply contrary to our Australian values. This is an attack on our sole democratic ally in the Middle East, people with whom we share values. I'll tell you this. This is the insanity of it. If you care about the rights of women, the rights of girls, and the rights of sexual minorities in the Middle East, you should be all in supporting Israel. Israel is the country where gay and lesbian Palestinians and Arabs flee to save their lives from the homophobic, anti-Semitic Islamists around them. This is the country that shares our values. and is a beacon of life and of light in the Middle East. So I think it's appalling that the government would even countenance such a petition on its website. And I would urge every Queenslander to use whatever means they can to contact their local representative and express their outrage at this.
Yes, I certainly will be, because you can imagine the sort of petitions that I've put up from time to time, and the fact that I have been declined a petition and this one has gone up is a shock to me. The one thing that I would say is that Maya is one of the Israeli original businesses, and so I've said to my husband, if he's listening, this just gives me the right to go in and spend a lot of money in Maya. Mark is someone who is well aware of the horrendous consequences of anti-Semitism. His mother was a Holocaust survivor. I related to you at the beginning of this conversation my own experience very recently of being with young people who were chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And what they're talking about, even unbeknownst, is about the targeted erasure of a group of people. We do have a text message. It's from Marion, and she says this, Mark, and it does end with a question. From the river to the sea chant reminds me of in Genesis where the devil taunts Eve by saying, did God actually say not to eat of fruit? Clearly, of fruit, question mark, I'll put that in. Clearly, it says in Joshua 1 verse 4 that he's giving the land to the chosen people. What is your comment on all of this? So particularly that verse that I read out, Joshua 1 verse 4, where God clearly says that he's giving this land to the people and it's from the river to the sea. Do you have a comment on that, Mark?
Yes, I think that for those of us who take the scriptures seriously, there is a sense that this land and the Jewish people's occupation of this land is something that is very dear to God's heart, and he's committed himself to it. My view, however, is even if you're not a person of faith, one should simply, as a moral person who understands politics and stands with people who are oppressed and minority groups, we should stand with Israel. It's been given its own nation state, has a right to defend itself. The precise boundaries of that are being negotiated, as most national state boundaries are, largely by war, by international agreement or by war. So we should all stand with the state of Israel, whether we're religious or not. And if we're religious, obviously we have an additional reason to do so. So, thank you for that question. It's a good one.
Our government, Albanese, he has recently said that we're recognising the Palestinian state. We've joined Belgium, France, Portugal, Canada, and the UK, all recently recognising the state of Palestine. The case for doing this is being presented to us as being strong. Like they talk about the war in Gaza, it's creating some horrific conditions. We all believe that. But if recognising Palestine as a state will help bring peace, then they're saying, how would you argue against us? How would you argue against it if that's what it's going to do, bring peace? I mean, in addition to that, even before the formation of the State of Israel after the Second World War, it was agreed that there would be a two-state solution. So is this a good thing, Mark? I'm really keen to hear what your commentary on this recognising Palestinian state.
Yeah, I mean, look, we all want peace, okay? The question is, how are we going to get it? And I would say that the Israelis have been trying for generations to establish peace through giving land, and the Palestinians have rejected at least 5 offers of a defined Palestinian national state. So they have rejected it. 2005, unilaterally, Israel withdrew 10,000 Jewish people from Gaza, including digging up the remains of Jews buried in Jewish cemeteries in Gaza, withdrew, gave them their own state. Gaza was a grand experiment in a two-state solution, and from the perspective of most Israelis, they would say that has been a spectacular failure because Hamas the Palestinian Authority, the average Palestinian on the streets of the disputed or occupied territories of the West Bank and of Gaza, they want one state. They actually don't want two states. So the commitment of the Islamists around Israel is to do away with the existence of a Jewish state. So I applaud our government's desire for peace. I mean, we all want that. No one wants that more than the Israelis. I mean, nobody wants that. So my Israeli friends are hoping that Hamas will be destroyed and that peace will finally come so that their children will not have to go and fight another round of war against Islamists who are trying to eradicate them. So the Israelis want peace. I think this spectacularly fails. I think this is in fact, really just tragic virtue signaling to try and appease Muslim voters in their own countries and signal to this diabolical coalition of the left and the jihadists in our own countries that, well, we're on the side of the Palestinians because the Palestinian cause has become, through their effective and well-funded propaganda, the moral cause of our generation, which is objectively insane, given that even as we speak in Nigeria, more innocent children are being massacred by jihadists than are being killed in Gaza. The same can be said for Syria. The same can be said on an order of magnitudes more deaths in Sudan. But no one cares. So my view is it's virtue signaling. It won't amount to anything. It's colonial arrogance. The idea that Macron and Carney and Albo, sitting in the comfort of Western civilization, can look at the Middle East and go, well, you primitive Arabs and Jews, you can't solve your own problems, but we here, we know the way to peace. And so we'll tell you this. Oh, and by the way, we'll also believe Mahmoud Abbas, a venal, corrupt leader who is utterly untrustworthy, who is authoritarian to his core, whose doctoral work was on denying the Holocaust. But we're going to trust him because, there's absolutely zero evidence through history that he is a trustworthy, reliable partner for peace. But we'll trust him because he said he's going to reform. So a major problem is that the jihadists who want to eliminate Israel see this as a massive victory. The Hamas see this as a victory. It's a reward for terrorism. It removes leverage to try and force these guys into peace, and it's not going to achieve anything. I mean, the Israelis are not. This is what I don't think people maybe here in Australia understand. This is a fight for their lives. This is not about some nebulous, idyllic situation or some minor irritant. These are people who want to destroy them, who want to perpetuate this. The jihadist Islamic foes that Israel are fighting are simply 21st incarnations of Nazi ideology. This is Hitler's Nazi eliminationist ideology continued. It was exported into the Middle East in the 1930s, and this is simply a continuation of the desire to kill every Jew in the world. And it beggars belief that our governments don't understand that, because no one tries to hide it. Like in the Middle East, it's not like anyone pretends this isn't what's happening. It's just here in the West, we're blinded, deceived, deluded. And that is a great concern.
I really appreciate your commentary on that. Virtue signalling, colonialism is not going to achieve anything. That's what my husband and I have talked about. We've said it's not going to achieve anything. And what we're seeing is that all the wrong people are seeing it as a victory. The ones that are seeing it as a victory are all the wrong people. The globe, it seems to me, has witnessed and been invested in the latest example of political violence in the US. It just seems to have been huge with the shooting of Charlie Kirk. And I read with interest something that you'd written on this recently. You said that you believe we're in great danger of sliding into tribalism, a worldview where it's only the success of my tribe that matters. So much so, you said that people who are not in my tribe are not perhaps even viewed as fully human, making their lives of less value. Can you talk to us about this tribalism idea and why it's so important for us in the West, and why it is so opposite to the values of Western Australia, Western civilization. Western Australia is good too, and I guess our political system and our way of life, which of course at its foundation is founded on the Jewish scriptures. Can you talk to us about that, Mark?
Yeah, for sure. Look, the way humans tend to organize themselves is we get born into families, but then we've got to provide and prevail against difficult situations. So families tend to group together into clans because there's strength in numbers. Then clans fight with each other, and the dominant clan overcomes the rival clans, and they form a tribe. And then tribes have been, throughout history, a very stable way of organizing humanity. And then what tends to happen is tribes fight incessantly. So you're always fighting with each other. And then eventually one tribe might come to dominate large numbers of other tribes, and they become empires. And then, so we've had this view from this reality right from the Old Testament times, the Hebrew scriptures, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, then the Romans, where you have one empire that says, the way to peace, to stop these tribes fighting, is to conquer them all. In the middle of that, a whole new political arrangement arose that God gave to the tribes of Israel. So the Hebrew scriptures said, and this was a unique political arrangement that has changed how we understand human arrangements. Hey, you 12 tribes, don't submit to the ruling empires of the day. And stop fighting with each other. Rather become a nation state under a king, under God, under the rule of law, where the tribes cooperate and have an identity and a loyalty that goes beyond their local tribal belonging. And that nation state was of course the 12 tribes of Israel, and that's a brilliant way of maintaining cohesion between different groups. So in Australia, what we have is a nation state, and this vision of the Western world coming from England. In fact, I'm reading a very interesting book on this called God is an Englishman, which it looks at the influence of Christianity on England from Roman times through to today, and how that has shaped our legal and political and religious views. It's a fascinating book. So it says, listen, how we in the West have developed is we've taken that view of Israel as a nation state, and we've used it as a way to build nation states where we overcome our tribal identities and say what matters is us as a whole country. And what is happening around the world is that those old allegiances, or that confidence in the nation state, has been eroded. So the real threat here in Australia is now people's primary loyalty is to their cultural or civilizational tribes. So you have Islamic, a Muslim bloc of voters, right? And now what matters most is what happens to other Muslims in the world. Or you have the radical left Marxist voters, where it's all about identity politics, which is just another form of tribalism. And in our tradition, what we need to recapture is the sense of Australianness, that we as a country are united in such a way by bonds of mutual loyalty and affection, so that when something bad happens to Australia, I feel like something bad has happened to me. That's what happens in families, right? And when something good happens to Australia, I feel like something good has happened to me. And when something bad happens to one of us here, we all feel bad. That's being pulled apart and fragmented, that sense of national unity and loyalty to each other. And it's being driven apart by foreign actors and ideologies who want to divide us internally, weaken us, and overcome us and destroy us. If our national identity is overcome and we're divided, we are liable to be overtaken by an alternate empire. It could be the empire of the hard left Marxist socialism, the empire of Islam, or the empire of the Han Chinese, or the empire of Hindu India. I mean, there are various other civilizational empires that would seek that could occupy that space. So none of those are particularly good. I think we want to embrace Western civilization, the freedoms that have come from that, and the national state in Australia where everybody's safe and free and we don't devolve into tribalism. That was a long answer.
No, it was a good answer. Of course, modern Australia's political system of way of life is based on the Jewish scriptures, the Old Testament, which basically teach that every human being is first and foremost created in the image of God, equal. And so that's why you say that, in Israel, people who are gay or homosexual leaning, they can go to Israel and be safe because we believe that everybody is equal, to not necessarily condoning different lifestyles, but ethnic, culture, race, wealth, whether you're rich or poor, education is free to all, etc. We do have another question, and it's a particular question about what I sort of half-jokingly talked about Myer. What did you say about Myer, please? Thank you and God bless you. It is really interesting because Myer probably is one of my favourite department stores, but it was founded by Russian Jewish immigrants, and his name was Sidney Myer, and he arrived in Melbourne in 1899. This is the story of Sidney Myer because I'd actually seen it. I looked it up ostensibly because on the news the other night, people were demonstrating in front of Myer and trying to stop people going into Myer because it has Jewish roots. The Myer family still is a significant shareholder in that department store. So, Marguerite, that's the answer to your question there. Now, if you wanted to text in a question or call in, call 1800 316 316, or you can text 0447 488 316. Mark, I want to talk to you more. We're going to very quickly run out of time, and there's so much that I'd like to talk to you about. But I think we are currently fighting this hatred and the tribalism that you discuss and the division. It's not just for ourselves, but I have 11 grandchildren, and I'm fighting for them. So I've certainly gotten behind your movement, your grassroots movement. But I want to talk a little bit more about how can everyday Australians stand up with you, but also how can leaders across different sectors stand up? How can what's happening on the 26th of October that we can support as well? If you could just talk to us about what we can do.
Yeah, thanks. So on the 26th of October, we're running a National Australians Against Anti-Semitism Day. We've got grassroots events being organised from all the way up on the Fraser Coast down through to Hobart and across to WA and everywhere in between. So I'd encourage your listeners to go to our website, and in fact the one to send them to is Australians Against Anti-Semitism. So just Google that or go to australiansagainstantisemitism.org and sign up to come and join us. Sign the petitions that are on there. And then let's get involved. Let's educate people. So learn about what's going on. These matters are critical. As you say, this is about our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids, that they can enjoy an Australia where everyone is safe, everyone is free, where we are a country that is unashamedly Judeo-Christian in our values, our institutions, and our practice. That's the best way to secure the rights of the minorities, of non-Christian and non-Jewish minorities here, is confidence in that civilization. So come to the website. We've got an event, if you're in Queensland, so far planned for the Fraser Coast, for the Sunshine Coast, for Brisbane, for the Gold Coast. We've got events in Coffs Harbour, in Newcastle, on the Central Coast, in Sydney, and on the South Coast. If you're in New South Wales, an event in Canberra, event in Melbourne, events in Perth. So, and if you want to organise a gathering, a get-together, reach out to us via our website. And then beyond that, join the movement. We are setting up chapters all around the country. And what our long-term plan is that we just make anti-Semitism as unthinkable as any other form of racism or bigotry. We can't imagine. I was at an event last night, a Jewish music festival, and they would have spent $15,000 just on security. So anytime a Jewish group meets together, you've got to have armed security guards. It's insane. Imagine if every time a gay football club wanted to have a practice, they had to pay for armed security guards to prevent homophobic attacks. well, we think that's ridiculous and unthinkable and un-Australian. That's the reality of the Jewish community in Australia. And we need to change that, because that's not the kind of country we want to be. And it's only getting worse. We are facing a tide of Jew hatred in this country that is only going to get worse. So we've got to stand up against it. We've got to mobilize everyone. And, God willing, in time, no politician at any level of government will be elected or pre-selected who is not an ally of Israel and is not an ally of the Jewish people and is not deeply committed to the Judeo-Christian values of Western civilization. I mean, that's where it's got to come to. And governments follow popular opinion. They follow what people think. So what we think and how we educate and mobilize people matters a lot. So, AustraliansAgainstAntisemitism.org, October the 26th. Come along, find somewhere to come and let your voice be heard.
So some listening are going to be thinking right now, oh boy, I have rally and march fatigue. It's happening, every weekend. We've got marches for this, we've got marches for that. How do you push back against that fatigue that we're feeling, Mark? Is there something that you can say just to encourage us about this particular cause? Yeah,
I totally get it. So our events are not going. We're working hard at the local grassroots. Most of the events are going to be more in the way of celebrations of life. They're going to be stalls, music, food, that kind of stuff. They're not they're not hate-filled political rallies. But yeah, it's an interesting season we're in, isn't it? And I think it's time that everyday Aussies woke up and realized, the getting feet on the street matters. And sure, we're tired, but you're not in a tunnel in Gaza, and war is tiring. Yep. And a friend of mine said, Mark, the problem is most Aussies just care about beer, footy, and maths.
Yeah.
And while that's true, it's also not true. Australians are fundamentally decent people.
Yeah.
But the freedoms we have in this country that we enjoy, they were bought at a price. Our ancestors paid with their blood to keep Australia safe and free as a liberal, democratic country. They went out and fought and died for us. So sure, we're tired. Sure, I'd rather be at the beach. Sure, I'd rather be binge watching Netflix. But you know what? We don't get to choose the times in which we live, and if we don't act now, our grandchildren are the ones who will pay the price.
Yeah. A couple of more text messages have come in. There's a comment from Bruce in Redland Bay in Queensland. He says, hi there, if this petition to boycott Jewish businesses, do they realise Westfield was established by the Lowy family? Frank Lowy was a Jewish Special Forces soldier. So all the more reason why anybody living in Queensland, you really need to get onto the Queensland. If you just Google Queensland Parliament e-petition, it'll take you to the e-petition site. At the moment, this offensive petition is right up the top. You'll see it there. There will be a link to the Clerk of the Parliament. So I think you could actually contact him, but also any of your local politicians. There's also a comment and question from Marge. Says, good morning. While looking up the Never Again Is Now website, a link came up from the Jewish Council slamming Never Again Is Now along with ACL and others. Then a link came up taking me to a petition from the Jewish Council, Sanction Israel for Genocide in Gaza. This is addressed to Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong, dated 9 September. Who is this council? If our federal government is listening to organisations like this, it's going to be a tough time ahead. Do you have any words of wisdom, quickly, Mark, for this person? It's Marge?
Yeah, Thank you. The Jewish Council of Australia is an utterly non-representative small group of hard left people who claim Jewish identity to support a strongly anti-Zionist anti-Israel movement. They're a tiny group. They're not representative, but they're well-funded and they have great PR, and the left and the government and the ABC love platforming them because they go, here are Jews who hate Israel and hate the Netanyahu government and stand for boycotting Israel. They're a tiny group. Don't listen to them. The beauty of Australia is we have freedom of expression. So I absolutely support their right to say what they say. But but don't listen to them. They're a tiny group. They do not represent the Jewish community. I would say 98% of the Jewish community find their views abhorrent, in my experience. So just ignore them.
So good. It's been an honour to talk to you, Mark. You're somebody who I really have such a great deal of respect for. Can you just remind us again those two websites? It's Australians Against Anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
and also Never Again Is Now.
AustraliansAgainstAntisemitism.org.
Okay.
Yeah,
the
just
best
go to that one.
Yep. And get on there, support Mark. He now has this is his full-time job, so support him in this, please, everybody. Mark, thank you so much for your time. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. God bless.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.